Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's 1 p.m. and we are going to call the August 7th meeting of the Planning Advisory Committee to order. Is there any declarations of pecuniary interest on today's agenda? Okay, seeing none. Can I have a motion to adopt the agenda? Mayor Elmsley, second by Councillor Warren. All in favor? That carries. Thank you. All right, that brings us right into item 3, public meeting reports. As required under the Planning Act, a public meeting is being held prior to the committee making a recommendation on these applications. All recommendations that come out of this afternoon will be forwarded to the next regular council meeting on August the 27th. The purpose of this public hearing is to allow the committee to gather information on the applications before us, to hear those wishing to make submissions on applications, and to allow the committee to ask questions of the applicants, interested parties, and staff. Everyone speaking today is requested to state their name for the public record, and in the interest of time, the committee respectfully asks that you keep your comments to no more than 5 minutes. When the appropriate time comes after the planner makes their presentation, members of the public will be provided an opportunity to speak to any of the public meeting items on the agenda. At that point, please either unmute yourself and turn on your video, or come to the podium and press the speak button to activate the microphone. So first off, we've got 3.1 Plan 2024-049, an application to amend the Village of Bobcaygeon zoning bylaw 16-78 at 89 Prince Street West, Bobcaygeon. Ms. Noreen?
Hi, everybody. I'll share my screen if it lets me here. Okay. Are you able to see my screen?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. Hi, everybody. For those who I haven't met yet, my name is Lindsay Noren, and I'm an urban planner from Dilling Consulting Limited, here on behalf of the City of Kawartha Lakes Development Services Division. I want to thank the applicant for being here today, and to staff and the chair and the rest of the Planning Advisory Committee for considering the zoning bylaw amendment application today being presented and received for informational purposes only. I would like to note that notice for this application was originally given to each landowner, agencies, and departments in accordance with matters of the Planning Act. This is the first circulation and appearance at PAC for this application. The subject lands are located at 89 Prince Street West in the former village of Bobcaygeon, now the City of Kawartha Lakes. The subject lands are known locally as the existing establishment Kawartha Dairy Limited. Legally, this application concerns the following properties: 89, 96, 100, and 102 Prince Street West, 5260, 82 Joseph Street, and 82, 94, 103 Head Street, lots 11 and 12 west side of Head Street, and lots 11, 12, and 13 east side of Head Street, and lots 11, 12, and 13 west side of John Street and part of John Street as closed, and lot 11 and part of lot 14 west side of Joseph Street under Register Plan 70 in the City of Kawartha Lakes. Within the official plan, the subject lands are designated as urban settlement area in Schedule A5 and urban in Schedule A2 of the Victoria County official plan. In the zoning bylaw, they are zoned restricted industrial special exception 2, urban residential type 1, urban residential type 2. The site is currently located on a city-owned and operated well system and septic system. The subject lands encompass a total area of 5.2 acres, with the main manufacturing facility having approximately 228 meters of frontage on Prince Street West. Kawartha Dairy comprises buildings across a total of 12 properties associated with the dairy production and manufacturing operation. There are several residential lots developed in the form of single detached dwellings to the north. On the north side of North Street is Jeremy Lumber, TSL Auto Shop, the Bobcaygeon Public School, and residential lots. Northeast of the property is Tommy Anderson Park on Duke Street. East, there are several detached dwellings. South, the Ice Hut convenience store and several more detached dwellings. West, Bob Cajun Senior Center, and further south on Head Street is a strip of single detached homes and a bed and breakfast establishment. A woodland area is located behind the senior center and houses with a wetland swamp located in the southern portion of the woods closer to Front Street West. The applicant is proposing to rezone the portions of the subject lands to facilitate the expansion of the existing Kawartha Dairy manufacturing plant. A retail store and a patio component is proposed for the properties linked to 89 Prince Street West. The development of an off-site employee parking lot is proposed at 82 and 94 Head Street, and a dairy museum is proposed at 96, 100, and 102 Prince Street West. Many of the existing buildings will be demolished to facilitate the expansion. Portions of the existing manufacturing plant, freezer, storage, homestead, and single detached building will be used as an office at 82 Joseph Street, and the trunk entrance from Head Street will be maintained. Over the past few months, the applicant and staff have been working together to address comments received since circulation period opened, specifically those from our in-house biologist at Dillon Consulting Limited, Whitney Moore, who raised various questions associated with a scoped EIS, environmental impact study, as the watercourse feature that runs through the property is proposed to be realigned with this development. The applicant and Ms. Moore met to discuss these and are working on revisions to the technical study, and these are ongoing. Additionally, planning had asked the applicant to clarify how some of the proposed buildings and structures met the applicable zoning provisions. The applicant is still working with planning staff to further address these. I must note that I appreciate all the correspondence given from the public in response to this application, and I want to reiterate that we are reviewing all comments received in tandem with our review of the materials. In summary, planning staff considers this application too premature for approval at this time and respectfully recommend that the application be received for informational purposes only and referred back until further refinements to the zoning bylaw amendment and respective technical studies have been addressed. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Ms. Noren. Committee, any questions at this time? Councillor Warren?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for that. At the very start, you mentioned well and septic, so it's not on well and septic, so I just noted, I heard you say that, so I was wondering what that was.
Through you, the chair, I believe it may have been an error on our end when preparing the report. It is on city-owned municipal services.
That's what I thought. I just wanted to be clear.
Any further questions? Okay. Seeing none, does the applicant, owner, or their agent wish to speak to the application?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. My name is Diana Kay. I am a planner with D.M. Wills Associates Limited. We are located in Peterborough. I'm also the planner on behalf of Kawartha Dairy. I will be providing a brief overview of the proposed development. I'll go through the existing conditions as well as what's being proposed, just to give you an idea of what's there today versus what our client is proposing to do over the next couple of years to facilitate the proposed expansion. If I could, Joel. Thank you. So, yeah, this is just the existing site itself. If we could go to the next slide. So, thank you to Dillon Consulting. They have been very good at communicating with their team to get through the process, to address any of their concerns through the application and the reports that were submitted in support of the application. It's important to note that there are several properties. We have submitted a corresponding deeming bylaw to merge the properties together, but of course that will depend on the approvals process that we're going through. So the city does have a copy of that application and that will be reviewed concurrently. So as you can see, I'm going to grab my laser pointer and do my best. So this is the proposed area for the expansion. Currently, the existing facility sits within this area. Thank you. And it is currently zoned M1-S2, so it's a site-specific industrial zone to facilitate Kawartha Dairy's operations. And it wasn't on the key map, but they also own this right-of-way that has been stopped up and closed, and that will include the retail store that's being proposed. So these properties will be merged with the balance of the properties, and because this is currently zoned residential, it requires rezoning to the M1-S2 for inclusion and facilitate and implement the proposed use. So this will all become one property to be rezoned. Well, this will just be rezoned M1-S2. The majority of the property in its current zone will remain the same. There's a couple of items that we do have to vary through the rezoning, including the exterior side yard. We do have to deal with some parking issues. However, if you look at Head Street, currently this is zoned residential, and this is where Kawartha Dairy is proposing the additional staff parking. There will be about 68 parking spots in that location. And this area here, there is an existing ice house that is owned and operated by Kawartha Dairy that will maintain on site. But these three properties here will facilitate the proposed museum that will showcase the history of Kawartha Dairy, along with the associated parking lots for visitors. So that's the extent of what we're rezoning or asking to rezone. If you could go to the next slide. Thank you. So just to give you an idea of where everything is located, however, I believe Ms. Noren gave a good overview of the subject property itself, so I think we can continue on to the next slide. This is the existing site. This is a mess. So if we follow so right here, I'm just going to point out there is an existing residential development. It is a separate conveyable lot. The house will be maintained. The lot will be maintained. There's no plans to merge that with the balance of the property or to remove that house. It will continue to operate as a single detached dwelling. There's an existing dwelling here that will be removed, as this piece will facilitate the proposed retail store and associated parking. The facility is located all along here. Oh, not that part, all along in here. Following me with your cursor. So that's just demonstrating what's existing today. There is right now there's an employee parking lot here with an existing entrance off of Joseph Street. There's an existing entrance right here to the existing single detached dwelling. There's another entrance to this existing single detached dwelling. And I'll speak more to it through the pictures so you can have a better visual, but the parking area right along Prince Street is located here. And then the truck traffic enters from Head Street into the facility. You'll also notice that this is the natural channel that Ms. Noren was speaking about that we're proposing to realign, and I'll get into details with respect to that in the next few slides. And then here are the existing entrances to the other proposed sites that are part of this application. We can go to the next slide. So this is just showing the existing development. The parking lot has existing single detached dwelling and other structures that would be removed to accommodate the proposed parking lot, as well as there are other residential homes located on these properties that would also have to be removed to facilitate the proposed development. I will note that on 96 Prince Street, we did complete a cultural heritage evaluation review as it was deemed necessary for that particular property. And the results of that share report indicated that there's no long-term significance, cultural significance of that property. So it was okay to remove the house in support of the proposed development. And next slide. So this was done on a very dreary day earlier in the year. As you can see, there's some remnants of snow. But I think what's important to note here is that this is the retail store as it currently exists, and here's the parking area. There's not a lot of definition between the road and the parking area itself. Also, the front of the building is quite close to the road, and there's nowhere for people to sit or enjoy their product. They'll have to get back into the car and drive away just to keep this road flowing, and because this is not very pedestrian vehicular safe. And then if we look on this photo, we just see some of the existing development that exists in the area. Next slide. So these are the entrances for the trucks on Head Street. And this is just viewing it in the different direction. You can see Kawartha Dairy here. Next slide. And then what you see from Head Street, this is the existing truck entrance, and this is what you see from Head Street. And again, the entrance is just a little clearer visual of where they're located along Head Street. Next slide. This is just a better visual of the kind of difference between where the road is and where the parking area. There's about 14 spots, I believe, right in front. So this is the manufacturing area, and this is the retail store located here. So everything's kind of crammed in on Prince Street as it currently exists. Next slide. And then we're just showing some existing development here. So this is the existing single detached dwelling that will remain. There's no plans to change that. And then this is the existing employee parking entrance off of Joseph Street. That entrance will continue to be utilized because this area won't change too much, maybe except this guy is going to have to find a new place to live, but I'm sure we can accommodate that. So this area will continue to be used for parking, but it will be in support of the retail store for customers as opposed to employee parking. Next slide. Again, just showing some of the existing development in the area, just to give you some context of what's surrounding the proposed or the existing development as it would be. Thank you. Next slide. And this shows the existing parking area that is currently being utilized by employees off of Joseph Street. Next slide. And so this is the location. This is the ice house that I mentioned that will remain. These are the dwellings that are going to be, you can't really see it on the side, that will be removed in support of the proposed museum and associated parking area. Next slide. And just another view of those dwellings itself. Next slide, please. And so the employee parking area, this is the existing development that is there today. So this would be demolished in support of the proposed parking lot, which would accommodate about 68 spots. Next slide, please. We'll get on to the proposed site plan. So with all of that information and context in mind, there's some significant changes here that will improve the area itself. So first you'll notice that this is the proposed building. There's some compartments of it that will remain the same. The majority of the expansion is going to happen to the north and to the east of the subject property itself. You'll notice that there's going to be a big difference between what's existing today and what's being proposed. The building is going to be pushed back quite a bit, and we're going to have better parking located in the front that would better delineate the area between the parking area as well as the road. There will be a more formal entrance with respect to the manufacturing facility. And we'll also remove the retail component, which will be moved here. The existing entrance will be maintained for deliveries only. Pedestrian and customer vehicular access will be from Joseph Street. So there's lots of parking available, as well as an outdoor patio area to ensure that customers that are coming in buying product can actually sit on site and enjoy it. There is an existing dwelling that is used as the corporate office and boardroom located here that will remain and continue to be utilized by Kawartha Dairy staff. And the biggest change is, you saw the water course that I pointed out earlier that is in and around this area. There was a natural channel study as well as a floodplain study that was completed in support of the application, and it recommended to realign the channel along the north and west side of the subject property. So the channel itself will continue to collect drainage and outlet further down the road. It's also being designed to accommodate the 100-year storm. So that way there's no new flooding issues. So the new channel will be collecting drainage, will be designed for the 100-year storm. It will also incorporate local plant species to ensure that everything is native to the area. This opens up the truck area to make sure that the entrances for truck traffic have a better turning radius in and out. And that is located off Head Street on the west side of the subject property. And as I mentioned, this is the existing single detached dwelling that will remain. Next slide. So this is the site plan for the proposed parking area. As you can see, it'll have about 68 parking spots, entrance off of Head Street. And then this is the proposed museum location. The manufacturing facility is right here. So it'll have an entrance off of Prince Street. The museum is located here with all the associated parking around it. Next slide. That is it. So I'm available for questions. I do have the whole team here. Well, not the whole team. There was a lot of studies completed in support. I'm available for questions. Mallet Creek, who's a civil engineer, is also here for questions, and so are the owner and staff from Kawartha Dairy. Ms. Noren was kind enough to send me a letter that she received this morning. So I just wanted to mention that Kawartha Dairy in March did host a neighborhood open house. It was very well attended. They gave a formal presentation to their neighbors about, what's existing, what's proposed, why they're undertaking this expansion, and why at this particular location. The information was well received. We received a lot of positive comments from those who attended. The majority of the questions did come around traffic and noise. We did do a noise study as well as a traffic study. And so the letter that we did receive, which is the first objection letter that we did receive to this application, talks about those two specific issues. So the traffic study itself indicates that the analysis they completed with respect to current and future traffic as a result of this proposed development will not have a significant impact on traffic. So the level of service will be maintained. The noise study came back with very generic recommendations. I think the biggest issues with respect to this development, not that I'm an acoustical engineer at all, however, based on the information in the report, really spoke to making sure that there was silencers on the trucks, and that there were some buffering measures with respect to any rooftop mechanical equipment to make sure that they are meeting the expectations from the ministry's sound guidelines. So those reports will be further refined as we go through the process. As we go through the process through the rezoning, after that there would still be a site plan approval application, and the details of the engineering design will come out through that to demonstrate how all of these things will actually be done on site. And of course will be reviewed and peer reviewed by the city and their consultants. The EIS was prepared in 2021. Since then, some new policy has come out, so we have to go back a little bit to the drawing board and make sure that we address all the new policies. The expectation is that the recommendations won't change, which means that there won't be any negative impacts to the natural heritage features on site or surrounding it. But that is currently being reviewed by our team and will be passed on to Dillon Consulting for further peer review from there. And I'm free for any questions if there are any.
Thank you, Ms. Kay. Councillor Richardson.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. Thank you very much for the comprehensive update. And you just answered my question I was going to ask about the traffic and noise studies based on that expansion, it looks like, for production, plus that expansion when it comes to tourism.
Correct.
And I was just wondering if those were going to be peer reviewed, so you answered that. Thank you very much. Another question is, you have that proposed 68 additional staff parking. What does that equate to actual employees if they're looking at that expansion? Do they have a number around that?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I will have to defer to Mr. Kerr with respect to the number of staff. Do you know how many more staff you'd end up? You could just tell me.
It runs between 50 and 70.
So 50 and 70.
I mean, one shift, and that's on the high end of it.
Perfect. And I think it's also important to note that currently the number of parking spaces is deficient. And even though we're expanding the area, we're actually increasing the number of parking spaces to almost meet the requirement. Through this application, we're required to have 120 spaces, and we're about 99 spaces. So we'll have to work through that with Dillon Consulting and city staff to ensure that there is sufficient parking for employees. It's working fine now when they're deficient, and we're only going to increase it through the new application. So we don't expect there to be any change.
Councillor Warren.
Through you, Mr. Chair, and thank you. Great presentation. Just wanted to say that the actual manufacturing area is really not increasing that much, is it? The actual
Through you, Mr. Chair, it will be bigger. I think in the context of the property itself, it doesn't appear to be a significant change, but it will have a significant impact on our client, Kawartha Dairy, actually being able to meet the demand that's currently being sought. So it will have a significant impact on Kawartha Dairy to meet its demand for its customers. But in terms of the site itself, I mean, there's very marginal items that we need to address through the rezoning as it comes to setbacks. We are pretty much meeting every single requirement in the current zoning bylaw.
And thank you for that. And I know that previously there was a noise issue, but that's all being dealt with the reefer trucks going up to the other plant. So that's a good thing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Member O'Reilly?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I didn't declare a conflict of interest earlier, but I had my Kawartha Dairy ice cream fixed last night, and I didn't negotiate a free one. I did pay for it, so seeing it was coming today. But anyway, so I was just, Diana, you mentioned, I think you're going to remove one of the houses. Was there a removal of a building or a structure? I realized the original Crow Homestead or Grandma's Homestead or whatever is still going to stay, but is there a removal of one?
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair. So there are removal of a few. So there's an existing single detached dwelling here that would have to be removed. This is the original homestead that will be maintained. And if we go to the next slide, thank you. There's a house here that will have to be removed and 2 homes here that have to be removed. So there's more than one for sure.
So are they owned by individuals?
Through you, Mr. Chair, they're owned by Kawartha Dairy.
But you have bought them all, because I know there was here before, and we're never sure. There was 1 or 2 holdouts, I believe, for the longest time, so you've been able to buy them since. Okay, thank you.
That is correct. Thank you.
Any further questions of Ms. Kay at this time? Okay, seeing none. Does anyone from the public wish to speak to the application? And I think we have someone online. Craig James. Mr. James, did you want to speak to the application?
Yes, I would. So
Okay.
I guess one of the questions.
Can you just turn your video on, please?
How many? I just did. Oh, sorry. There we go. How many square feet are we adding on to the manufacturing area?
If you've got questions or whatever, if you just want to throw it all out, and then after everybody has spoke to the application, Ms. Kay will try and answer best she can all those questions, but we won't be going one-on-one on every question.
Okay, well, then, and the traffic, I mean, I understand that they say the traffic, but if the production increases, there's going to be more traffic. And it's close to the school. It's very close to the school. There's children there. It's creating a safety issue. The other industrial part of Duke Street, I mean, those places are not open during the evening. They're only open during the daytime. Maybe the town office or yard might be open during plowing season and whatnot, but the rest of the time, it would be only open during daytime hours. This is going to be operating how many hours a day? And if this was any other company, let's just say Kawartha Dairy decided that they were going to go build a new facility, would the town allow another industry to come in and take over the property? I have that question to ask, because that is, to me, to be quite honest, they went and built their distribution area very nice down on 36 there, and I believe there's more than adequate space for them to build a new building and not create any issues in the town itself. I also believe that it's going to decrease the value of my home.
Okay, is that all? Is that it? Everything, Mr. James?
I think that's pretty much it. That's the situation that I'm concerned with.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else from the public wishing to speak to the application? Go ahead, come right up to the mic.
Yes, I'm Craig Bradley. I'm at 107 Head Street. I'm concerned about the traffic increase, especially with the trucks. And I'm not sure how they want to route their trucks, but when you go north on Head Street to Duke Street, there's a slight increase. It's a little hill. And in the wintertime, it's quite, if it's not plowed, it's quite tricky to get out. I don't know if their trucks want to go up Head Street, because it's going to be going right in front of my house. And I don't know if they're going to be coming down into their entrance, which will be, right now they come along Prince. Prince. So that's one of my concerns. And it was just brought out to me now, that little creek, that runoff that they want to divert, that goes across my property, but I see that's going to be diverted onto their property. So I don't see how that's going to affect me, so that's good. And the other thing that, this last gentleman touched on it, is how it's going to decrease my property value, because I really don't know if I want to sell, who's going to want to buy my place when it's in the middle of a commercial development with buses, tour buses coming in, all the truck traffic, extra traffic for for the museum. So I've got no recourse on what to do here, because if I try to, I don't know, like I was gonna, this is my home. I've been there for over 20 years. And it just seems to me I'm getting squeezed out here. I can't see in the future that my property is going to be worth anything as far as market value goes. So these are, I know Kawartha is, Kawartha Dairy is a big supplier of business in Bobcaygeon. I totally respect that. I knew that it was there when I bought the property, but at that time, it really wasn't that big of a deal. There was a few noise issues which I approached, and they actually addressed it, with the backup alarms in the middle of the night. That's been addressed, and plus they have their distribution center over on Highway 36, so that's decreased a lot of the traffic. But, it wasn't a big issue when I bought it. It's a big issue now for me, because I was going to leave this to my son. My son told me, and he's got 2 young children. He goes, "Dad, I don't want to raise my kids here with all this traffic. My little kids running around." So, I'm kind of a pickle here, and of what to do. And the other thing is, when you look at the development, I don't know how many neighbors are here from the other part, but there's not much. Kawartha owns everything around. I'm the only one really. Well, there's Connie right next to me, Connie Flynn. But really, there's no other support from anybody else saying yay or nay. Like I don't even know why this meeting. To me, is just going to be pushed forward without any. If there was maybe 50% or 75% of the neighbors say, "Hey, we don't want this," there might be an issue. But there's nobody to really complain, because Kawartha has the whole neighborhood sewn up, And the other gentleman said about the traffic for the school, and there's a school crossing right at the S corners. And if the trucks are coming in through there, that could be a big issue, I think. Because that's a big crossing in the morning and at afternoon. And not just for the fact, like, I don't know what their plan is for the truck route. I mean, it's going through residential areas as it is. I just don't, I'd like to know if they're going to be coming up Head Street or not, because if they are, then that will affect the safety conditions for that school crossing. And anyway, so that's basically what I have to say.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Bradley. Is there anyone else from the public wishing to speak to the application? Anyone else from the public wishing to speak to the application? Calling a third and final time. Anyone else from the public wishing to speak to this application? Okay, seeing and hearing none. Ms. Kay, would you like to respond to any of the questions or concerns?
Through you, Mr. Chair, thank you. Yes. So I think I jotted them all down, but please let me know if I missed any. With respect to the area, existing in square meters, the site for the manufacturing facility is about 2,403, and the proposed will be 7,764. So we're looking at a difference there of just over 5,000 square meters. And as I mentioned, the majority of the expansion is going to the east and north of the subject property. With respect to the hours of operation, currently it's 24 hours over 6 days a week. With the expansion, that's actually going to be reduced. So the number of hours will be less than what it's currently today. And with respect to the route, yes, traffic will be headed. It is down Head Street, so it will be redirected from where it currently is today. And so you're going to see traffic on Joseph Street and Head Street. But because of the operation itself, we're not anticipating any increase in truck traffic. So you're not going to see more truck traffic, but you will see it rerouted. So I think it might be important at this point to sit down and have a conversation with the gentleman beside me.
Mr. Bradley.
Mr. Bradley, thank you. I wrote it down and I couldn't find it. Mr. Bradley, just to have that discussion to identify where the route is and then address any concerns. I think I answered them all.
Okay, thank you. Committee, any further questions? Councillor Warren?
Did you say down or up? So are you going up the hill to County Road 8 or down?
Both ways, down.
Both ways. Yes. Okay, thank
North
you.
and south.
Any further questions, committee? All right, thank you, Ms. Kay. Committee, after considering all the comments, what is your recommendation to council? Councillor Warren?
Through you, I'll move that let's see where it is here. That report plan 2024-49 amendment to the Village of Bobcaygeon zoning bylaw 16-78 at 89 Prince Street West in the former Village of Bobcaygeon, Kawartha Dairy Limited, be referred back to staff to address agency comments and for further review of technical studies.
Thank you. Is there a seconder for the motion? Councillor Richardson. Any discussion? Member O'Reilly?
Just for clarification, what studies I know you did a preamble to that, which studies are still remaining? Maybe.
Ms. Noren, would you be able to answer that?
Sorry, yeah.
Hi, yes, through you, Chair. I can answer that. There's no studies remaining or outstanding, but the ones that have been submitted, their further review needs to be required by planning staff, and we're working with the applicant to refine them to make sure they're sound and represent good land use planning for us to possibly move this forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Is that good? Okay. Any further discussion? Calling the question. All in favor? Any opposed? And that carries. Thank you. That brings us to item 3.2, Plan 2024-050, an application to amend the Township of Emily zoning bylaw 1996-30 at 1023 Kings Wharf Road. Lindsay, Ms. Noren, you are up again.
Can you see my screen? Everything's good? Perfect. Thank you, everyone, again, for being here, and to the Planning Advisory Committee for once again considering this zoning bylaw amendment application today to be presented and received for informational purposes only. I would like to note once again that this notice for application was originally given to each landowner, agencies, and departments in accordance with matters of the Planning Act, and this is the first circulation and appearance at PAC for this application. The subject lands are located at 1023 Kings Wharf Road in the geographic township of Emily. The property is currently designated as Rural and Environmental Protection on Schedule A3 of the City of Kawartha Lakes official plan, and the subject lands are zoned A1 on Schedule A on the Township of Emily zoning bylaw 1996-30. The site is approximately 39 hectares on a private well and septic system. The property contains an existing dwelling, a shed, a metal garage, 2 frame sheds for storage, a barn, and pasture land. Surrounding uses are predominantly agriculture uses and single detached dwellings. The applicant is proposing to rezone the subject lands to permit an on-farm diversified use in the form of an agriculturally related roof truss manufacturing business and accessory parking area. Policy 16.3 of the City of Kawartha Lakes official plan articulates that agriculture-related commercial and industrial uses are permitted within the rural land use designation. A roof truss manufacturing business can be considered an agriculture-related business, and the applicant has shared that the roof trusses will be manufactured for agricultural buildings within the area. Important to note is that although I mentioned that there is a portion of property designated as environmental protection, it is to the north of where the development is proposed and not on or near this area. As per section 7.1 of the Township of Emily zoning bylaw, a single detached dwelling and as well as agricultural use are permitted in the A1 zone. The existing dwelling and the existing uses would remain unchanged. However, on-farm diversified uses such as an agricultural roof truss manufacturing are not listed within the permitted uses. Accordingly, a zoning bylaw amendment is required to rezone the subject lands from A1 agricultural to A1 agricultural exception to permit the on-farm diversified use. It appears that the building as proposed structurally meets the provisions outlined in the zoning bylaw. However, planning staff are still working with the applicant to ensure this is the case. Planning staff and agencies have reviewed the proposal and supporting materials, and several comments were raised by planning and other parties in relation to the need for an agricultural impact brief, a minimum distance separation calculation, several zoning deficiencies, and addressing the findings of the traffic impact brief. Planning has let the applicant know that the traffic impact brief may be subject to a peer review at the applicant's expense as a result of several comments from development engineering. Other comments raised by agencies have all been sent to the applicant to address with the rest of them. The Dillon planning team has also received several comments from the public in relation to the application requesting materials to review. Our team has done our best to respond to these concerns with the materials we have available to us. We recognize that there is still work to be done to ensure that this proposal is sound and represents good land use planning. So planning staff respectfully recommend that the application be received for informational purposes only and referred back until further refinements to the zoning bylaw amendment, respective technical studies have been addressed, specifically as it relates to zoning deficiencies and traffic impact brief considerations. The applicant is also here to assist in any questions anyone may have at this time. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Ms. Noren. Committee, any questions at this time? Councillor Richardson?
Thank you, and through you, Chair. Just a few questions, if you don't mind. In the report, it marks that the roof trusses will be manufactured for agricultural buildings within the area. So that is the complete use, just agricultural use?
Through you, Chair. Is your question that the proposed roof truss manufacturing being only for agricultural related uses, the only agricultural use on the property?
That's correct.
As of right, the property is currently being used for pasture land and is designated agriculture in the official plan. I defer to the applicant who is here to address any further explanation of the existing uses on the property.
That will come up, Councillor Richardson, so I'll ask you to defer that question.
I will defer that question. I just have a couple. Okay, then I guess my secondary question was, if you look at the definition of on-farm diversification, would this be the secondary use to the principal use of the property, which the principal use is obviously cash cropping by the sounds of it, right? So that's kind of the definition that I'm looking for as well. And you had mentioned that we do have some traffic briefs that are outstanding. And at this time, would our city staff be able to answer that question on those outstanding traffic briefs, or do you want to hold that as well?
Mr. Timms?
We have reviewed the traffic brief. We have just asked for revisions to it to confirm the access can handle larger scaled vehicles for delivering lumber and hauling the trusses out. We want to make sure confirm safety for egressing and accessing the site with the current platform of Kings Wharf Road.
So is there a concern with turning because of the sizes of the material that would have to be received?
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair, that is correct. With this, Kings Wharf is a 6-meter platform, and they don't want widening out the driveway entrance. So there's concerns with getting the heavier scaled trucks in, egressing the site.
Councillor Warren?
And
Oh, go ahead, Ms. Noren.
go ahead. Through you, Chair, just to circle back and answer one of your questions. Yes, it would be secondary to the primary agricultural use on the property.
Thank you for that. Councillor Warren?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Question, does the applicant have another trust building business on some of his land?
I think that's another question for the applicant
Okay.
when they're...
I thought they might know.
Any further questions of Ms. Noren at this time? Everybody good? Okay. Does the applicant, owner, or their agent wish to speak to the application? Mr. DeBoer?
Good afternoon, Chair and members. Tom DeBoer with TD Consulting. Lindsay and our team on our side have been working diligently through this. We actually have resolved a lot of the traffic issues, just not in time to publish as part of this meeting. Our intention is to continue to work with staff to ensure that this is going forward. Moving along with some of the questions, the applicant or the owner of the property is a family-based business. We're not talking a huge scale industrial type truss manufacturing plant. It's predominantly for their community, and obviously if the opportunity arises to sell to the general public, they would obviously capitalize on that. The use of the farm is part of the agricultural process of the family that's currently residing there, and this would be secondary to that process. The traffic issue, the site plan that was depicted on the screen, we've actually proposed a second entrance specifically for the truss plant to incorporate the separation between the residential / agricultural use and the proposed manufacturing plant. So we can keep that separation between those two uses on the farm. The last question, I believe, Ms. Warren, you had a question with regards to, refresh my memory on that, please.
Whether or not the applicant had another trust building business on another piece of land in the area.
The thought process is, the answer would be correct, no, he does not. Currently, they are operating out of another plant that they're renting the facility. So instead of renting the facility, they want to create their own facility on their own property. The previous truss manufacturing plant, which is known on just around the corner from here, the previous owner has left town, and we're actually working with that particular property owner to facilitate a new truss plant near Belleville, where he's residing now. Yep.
Just to be clear, so the trusses will be specifically for just farms in the area, no other types of building, just farms.
So as I mentioned, the predominant use will be for agriculture, predominant use. There may be opportunities to sell trusses to the general public should it be necessary. Or somebody comes to order a set of trusses for a house, for instance. I can't imagine that the applicant would want to say no to a just small business. So again, the use is to create trusses, both for agricultural and residential uses, just so we're clear.
In the report, though, it specifically said just for farming, for local farming operations. It did not say anything about any other buildings.
So just for clarification, just so we're on the same topic, the intent of this particular plant is to create trusses that are much longer than the average truss plant creates today. So if you went to Scugog Lumber, they limited to the length of trusses that they can provide in their facilities. The primary focus on this is for agricultural structures that have much larger spans, which is why the size of the building is required as well.
Councillor Richardson?
Thank you. And so on that, what would be the scale to size based on the actual production facility as opposed to the rest of the principal use of the farm? Do you have like a scale of how much on the hectare, how much property is going to be used just for the truss part as opposed to the principal use, which is agricultural?
One second, I do have that answer. We're just going to look that up for you. It's there, but I can't see it. While we're doing that, is there any other questions?
Any further questions from anybody while we're waiting? Looks like this is the big one.
Uh-oh. Right, so we're talking, the agricultural piece that we're dealing with is 39.5 hectares in size. We're using 0.4% of lot coverage for all structures on the property. So less than 0.5%.
So less than 2%.
Less than 0.5%, so 0.4%, yeah.
Okay, any further questions at this time for Mr. DeBoer? Okay, seeing none. Does anyone from the public wish to speak to the application? Okay.
Good afternoon, Chair and members of the Planning Committee. My name is Jenna Janzik. I currently reside at 987 Kings Wharf Road. I've grown up and resided on Kings Wharf Road since 1996. From working in the agricultural field, formerly Agrico, to completing several sustainable agricultural courses at university, I've always had a passion and connection to, farming, agricultural, rural areas. And my ties to this area is what led us to choosing our home and raising our family here. I respect the developing of our economy and, support self-employed and small businesses. But I believe that we do have a need to support the developing residential areas that are coming up in the city of Kawartha Lakes. However, I am here today to express some concerns, questions, and comments regarding the rezoning application for 1023 Kings Wharf Road. In support of these concerns, I have gathered data from the application for rezoning, the planning justification report, the septic design, the grading and drainage plan, the traffic impact brief, the Township of Emily bylaw 1996-30, the provincial policy statement, and the City of Kawartha Lakes official plan. So the proposed zoning bylaw amendment is seeking to change the land use from agricultural A1 to a site-specific agricultural exception, which would allow for a roof truss manufacturing business as an on-farm diversified use. In my findings from the provincial policy statement section 1141, it states, promoting diversification of economic base and employment opportunities through goods and services, including value-added products and the sustainable management or use of resources. When speaking with the applicant, he had mentioned that this was a family-run business. So I'm wondering if this business will have employment opportunities for individuals in our municipality and how many. One of the guidelines mentioned is that on-farm diversified use must be secondary, I know we've touched on this, to the principal agricultural use of the property. The justification report states that the OFDU must be less significant than the agricultural use on the property in spatial or temporal terms. In regards to temporal terms, does this refer to the time spent to operate the OFDU? If the current primary agricultural use of this property is cash crops or pasture land with some environmentally protected areas, how would this OFDU be secondary in terms of temporal terms? Another guideline mentioned in the OFDU includes, but is not limited to, home occupations, home industries, agritourism uses that produce value-added agricultural products. I can understand why roof trusses built will be used for some agricultural buildings. In the Emily Township bylaw, definitions defines wood manufacturing plant can be found under the definition of industry medium, which means industry assembly, manufacturing, or processing plant, which is predominantly conducted within a wholly enclosed building, but which may also involve open storage. Examples are sheet metal plastic, fiberglass, or wood fabricating, motor vehicle body shops, or food processing facilities. An agricultural use is defined as a use of land, buildings, or structures for the purpose of forestry, field crops, fruit farming, market gardening, dairying, animal husbandry, aquaculture, poultry, beekeeping, and such uses are customarily and normally related to agriculture. So does this roof truss plant fall under this parameter? If so, I would like to know approximately what percentage of the products going to be built are going to be going towards agricultural purposes as opposed to residential or commercial. If it does not fall under this parameter and is more of an industrial business, would it make more sense to look at some of the vacant properties in our industrial zone areas of Emily or Lindsay? And or look at the taxation versus industry versus agriculture. As noted several times throughout the justification report, the on-farm diversified use will be secondary to the principal of the property. My question is, how will the municipality enforce these guidelines to ensure the use remains secondary to the efficient use of land, agricultural land? As an adjacent neighbor, along with several other rural residential families in a 1 kilometer radius of the proposed business, our concerns are operating hours, noise level of manufacturing and transportation, the increased traffic on our rural roads, the structural integrity of our already deteriorating roads, especially during our half-load season, the safety risk to our vulnerable community members, children, and youth. There has been some comments made from neighbors from a smaller truss manufacturing business currently running that noise can be heard from distances of up to 1 kilometer away. Some residents are also concerned with proper devaluation. This should be considered. Some concerns about where the doors may be located on the building to ensure the least intrusive noise output to the surrounding residences. In the mapping of nearby houses in a 1 kilometer radius, there are approximately 20 homes, with the least amount of houses being in the northern direction. If some community members and myself and my family have some of these concerns, I believe that the planning committee should also consider them. If this is indeed this use of land is adhering to our provincial and municipal policies and guidelines, then I will support the committee's and staff's expertise and the experience with similar applications, and that our municipality's strategic priorities will be respected and in line with the decision. Thank you for your time and understanding.
Thank you, Mrs. Jansen. Is there anyone else from the public wishing to speak to this application? Anyone else from the public wishing to speak to the application? Calling a third and final time. Anyone else from the public wishing to speak to the application? Okay. Seeing and hearing none. Mr. DeBoer, did you want to, you're good? Okay. Committee, questions? Councillor Warren?
Through you, Mr. Chair, to Mr. DeBoers, I guess. What would be the percentage of farm income coming from the truss building versus the cash crop? And would that, because if it's more, then it wouldn't be really secondary.
That is a question I do not have an answer to. But we'll take that under advisement, and when we bring it back, we'll have an answer for that. Absolutely. Councillor Richardson?
Thank you, through Chair. I was just going to ask to see if we could have some comments towards the letter of concern that was brought to us by Jenna today, because I believe she has some very valid points in that should be addressed, and I would want to make sure that we are actually addressing some of those comments directly.
I agree 100%. And again, whenever we do have these types of applications and obviously neighbor concerns, we do address them through the process, and we'd be more than happy to do that. Just as it relates to employment, the intention at this point is to have 6 to 10 employees at any one time, which will be from the local Mennonite community.
Member O'Reilly.
Yeah, just as a comment to some good questions here as well too. I just want to remind people that you know, with lots of large structures being built in our community now, big dairy barns, big chicken barns. Now we have to go out of our community to get these. A number of them are in Scugog Lumber or all across the province. This could be a potential opportunity to do locally. And when farm operations, would you want to be besides somebody at 2,000-3,000 head of cattle for a feedlot, or would you want to have a corn dryer and a grain dryer going most of the night? I mean, so there's always noise issues, no matter what issue you have in farm operations sort of thing. So anyways, look forward to the report coming back and getting answers on the questions that we've had here today.
Any further questions? Mayor Elmsley, you're good? Okay. Committee, you've heard the comments. What is your recommendation to council? Mayor Elmsley?
As printed, I guess, that it be referred back to staff.
Okay, the report plan 2024-050, amend the Township of Emily zoning bylaw 1996-30 at 1023 Kings Wharf Road be received, and that report plan 2024-050, amend the Township of Emily zoning bylaw 1996-30 at 1023 Kings Wharf Road be referred back to staff to address agency comments and for further review of technical studies. Is there a seconder for the motion? Member Barkwell, any further discussion? Calling the question, all in favor? Any opposed? And that carries. Thank you. That brings us to item 3.3, Plan 2024-051, applications to amend the Kawartha Lakes official plan and Township of Somerville zoning bylaw 78-45 at 1062 Somerville 3rd concession and 1691 Kawartha Lakes Road 121. Mr. Haniff, go ahead.
It says, through your chair, it says that the host disabled participant screen sharing. Okay, now it works. Okay. Good afternoon, Planning Advisory Committee, Chair, City staff, the applicant at Ecoview, and members of the public. I am Michael Hanifi of Dillon Consulting Limited, acting as planning staff on behalf of the City of Kawartha Lakes. Planning staff have received an application to amend the City of Kawartha Lakes official plan and the Township of Somerville zoning bylaw to facilitate a future lot line adjustment and to permit a septic system expansion serving the existing campground uses at the Log Chateau Park, which currently contains trailer sites, rental cabins, a store, nature trails, and docking facilities. The uses are currently serviced on private well and septic. The subject lands include both the existing Log Chateau Park campground at 1691 County Road 121, noted as Lot 18 Concession 2 on the map in front of you, and the adjacent lands as well at 1062 3rd Concession, shown as Lot 17 Concession 2. The future lot adjustment is also shown as a line that bisects Lot 17 Concession 2. The statutory notice requirements as per the Planning Act have been fulfilled as part of the applications, and comments received have been considered and responded to where necessary. All reports have been circulated to the applicable city departments and commenting agencies for review and comment. In terms of surrounding uses, to the north of the site is predominantly rural lands, including related commercial and industrial uses, as well as the Fenelon Valley Trailer Park just outside of the frame of this picture. East is more rural lands, as well as in the south, and to the west, it's rural lands, including low-density residential uses and the Burnt River, and the 4 Mile Lake is just further west of the frame of this picture as well. In terms of the application, the 2 properties that are subject to the application are noted here with their lot areas noted as well. So property A, which is on the west side, is at 1062 3rd concession, and it has an area of approximately 48.15 hectares. And property B, which is the existing campground uses at 1691 County Road 121, have an area of approximately 59.12 hectares, and the Victoria Rail Trail bisects the property. And as noted, property B includes the existing Log Chateau Park. As noted, the subject lands are proposed to be subject to a future lot line adjustment, which requires an official plan amendment and a zoning bylaw amendment to support and facilitate. Property A is subject to that lot line adjustment, where approximately 25.37 hectares of land intends to be given to the existing Log Chateau Park, which is the benefiting lands shown as property B. After the future lot line adjustment, the benefiting lands would have approximately 84.49 hectares, and the retained property A will have approximately 22.78 hectares. As per Schedule D of the Planning Advisory Committee report, as shown, the proposed zoning bylaw amendment would amend Schedule A of the Township of Somerville zoning bylaw from rural general zone to the campground commercial exception zone for the lands to be added via a lot line adjustment. And this is to permit the septic system expansion that will serve the existing campground uses. The rural general zone does not permit campgrounds or similar uses. Therefore, the lands are being rezoned to match the existing Log Chateau Park zoning. A holding provision will also be put on the property to prohibit any potential expansion of additional uses beyond the septic system until such a time as the site plan control approval is attained and the holding symbol is removed. Generally, in terms of the policy conformity, the zoning bylaw amendment can be supported in the provincial policy statement and the growth plan and the official plan. In order to facilitate the lot line adjustment as well, there needs to be an official plan amendment as part of this application. And to do so, the amendment proposes to redesignate a portion of the subject lands from rural to a rural special policy area to permit the lot line adjustment, to recognize the resulting lot area deficiencies for the retained rural designated lands. And as part of that, policy 16.4.9 will be the special rural area policy applicable, and it is applicable to the shaded portion that you see on your screen. The policy would read as follows. Notwithstanding section 16 of this plan, lands designated rural on part of lot 17, concession 2, Township of Somerville in the City of Kawartha Lakes, identified as 1062 3rd concession, Geographic Township of Somerville in the City of Kawartha Lakes, which are subject of this amendment, may be developed subject to a consent approval to permit a lot line adjustment with the retained lot to have a lot area of not less than 22.78 hectares. In terms of policy conformity, the official plan amendment can be supported by the provincial policy statement, growth plan, and the official plan. In conclusion, as part of the review, the relevant departments and agencies were circulated on both applications as noted, and any comments received have been addressed. This presentation also fulfills the statutory public meeting requirement, and therefore staff respectfully recommends that the zoning bylaw amendment respecting application D06-2024-015 and the official plan amendment respecting application D01-2024-005 in the form attached as Appendix D and Appendix E to Report Plan 2024-051 be approved. And thank you very much for your time. I'm available for any questions, and so is the applicant, Kent Randall of EcoView.
Thank you for that, Mr. Haniff. Questions? Councillor Warren.
Through you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for the presentation. So we passed this, but there's still a holding designation on this until a site plan comes forward. So I was just wondering if the applicant has started that process yet.
For you, Mr. Chair, no, they have not started the process yet. After the approval here, they will have to have their lot line adjustment approved and granted, and then the site plan and the holding symbol being removed are subject to any future development on the site beyond the campground septic system expansion uses. So if they wanted to essentially develop more cabins as a result of development in the future, it would be subject to that site plan control application as well as the removal of the holding. So this approval is strictly for the septic system expansion to serve the existing campground uses.
Mayor Elmsley?
No, my question was around the holding symbol.
Okay. Any further questions? Member Barkwell?
Yeah, I kind of at a loss. The lot line adjustment, where the two arrows are, is that meaning that's the present lot line and the adjustment is the new red around where the potential septic system is going?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, the lands to be retained in the red here. So those lands, the adjustment would happen between the retained and the severed, as noted on property A. And so that red portion would now become part of the existing property B and benefit those lands as property B. And the septic system would be on those lands to service the existing campground uses.
So the Log Chateau owns that property now, as well as the property just to the north of that?
That's correct.
Any further questions? Mayor Elmsley?
I'm wondering if we're putting the cart before the horse here. Shouldn't we get rid of the holding symbol first before we do all the other changes and sign it off?
Mr. Hanoff?
Mr. Chair, the holding symbol is essentially to prohibit any development of uses beyond the existing campground as well as the septic system to service that existing campground until such a time as additional studies are done to allow for that. The lands have a few environmental features on them that would need to be further reviewed and studied if building and structures were to be proposed. So as part of this review, we had our biologist/ecologist Dylan review the application, and given the proposed works for an septic system expansion, it's okay to move forward as is with the appropriate mitigations as noted in their review that the applicant has concurred with. And then if there are additional structures that may be a little bit more disruptive, the intention of the site plan control application holding symbol would be to protect against those uses until such a time as those studies are completed.
Thanks for that. I'm wondering, Mr. Chair, if the director, is this a normal practice that's followed, or are we deviating from what would be done normally?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, thanks for the question, Ms. Mayor. The practice is quite conventional. It is a tool that has actually been chosen specifically for this project because it captures excellently what's needed. It allows the work to be done for the septic system, which is fundamentally what's being requested, and will allow the lot line adjustment to be facilitated through a consent application that's already been filed with the city, but has been paused pending evaluation in front of this committee and the public on the proposed use of the septic and what future ramifications or implications that could have. So the way to protect the features until such time as there is an expansion proposed, should that happen. It's not being proposed currently, but we are looking at the size of the septic and what that could mean for, the future growth of the campground one day, that we protect the features on those additional lands being added. It's a substantial size, certainly beyond just the area needed for the septic system. So we protect that through the H. And if in the future a campground expansion or new buildings or structures are proposed, that's the opportunity to then make sure the studies are prepared, reviewed, brought in front of council to have the H removed, and then move forward. The holding takes care of that. The zoning change and the OPA change in front of PAC today is just to allow for the placement, construction ultimately of the septic system on those lands to be added. And that's it.
Thank you.
Any further questions for Mr. Hanoff at this time? Okay, thank you. Does the applicant, owner, or their agent wish to speak to the application?
Yes, Mr. Chair, it's Kent Randall from EcoView Consulting. We're the planners for the applicant, Log Chateau Park, and is represented here today by the owner, Lucas Lowell. I believe he's in the gallery. I don't have much to add. I think that was a good discussion about how this really breaks down. I think that the main thing with the zoning is there's sort of those two prongs to it, right? So the first part of it allows Lucas to construct the septic system to support the existing park. But then there's also another permission that if he were down the road, and as was stated, this is not the proposal at this time. It's just to simply facilitate the construction of the septic system. But if an expansion were contemplated down the road, that he could do that subject to site plan approval and subject to doing additional studies. So that's all that holding provision does. And really the way that we see this is that the OPA is sort of a technical amendment. The policy in your official plan allows for minor lot line adjustments in the rural area. In this case, this isn't considered minor because of the size of the lot that's being added. So that's why the official plan amendment's needed. That's why, as the mayor said, the cart before the horse. That's why we're doing this sort of like in what would appear to be a backwards way. It's not backwards for the purposes of addressing the policy, but I mean, in a lot of cases, you get zoning amendments across your desk that are conditions of consent. In this case, we're going the other way, and that's just simply to address the policy conformity issue. So as far as we're concerned, it's a fairly simple, straightforward application. Staff concurs, and they provided that recommendation as such. And so I'm here, and as I said, Lucas is here as well to answer any questions if you do have any. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Mr. Randall. Committee, any further questions of Mr. Randall at this time? Okay, seeing and hearing none. Is there anyone from the public wishing to speak to the application? Anyone from the public wishing to speak to the application? Calling a third and final time. Anyone else from the public wishing to speak to the application? Okay, seeing and hearing none. Committee, Councillor Warren.
I'll move that report plan 24-051 amend the Somerville zoning bylaw 78-45 and the City of Kawartha Lakes official plan at 1062 3rd Concession and 1691 County Road 21, part of Lot 17 and 18, Concession 2, Township of Somerville in the City of Kawartha Lakes be received. That a zoning bylaw amendment respecting application D06-2024-015, substantially in the form attached as Appendix D to Report Plan 2024-051, be approved and adopted by Council. Then an official plan amendment respecting application D01-2024-005, substantially in the form attached as Appendix E to Report Plan 2024-051, be approved and adopted by Council, and that the mayor and clerk be authorized to execute the documents required by the approval of this application.
Seconder, Member O'Reilly. Any further discussion? Calling the question, all in favor? Any opposed? And that carries. Thank you very much. At this time, this public meeting held under the Planning Act is now adjourned. That brings us to item 4, deputations, which I believe we have none. Correspondence, which I believe we have none. Regular and returned reports. Item 6.1, Plan 2024-043, application to amend the United Townships of Laxton, Digby, and Longford zoning bylaw 32-83 at 31 Barkwell Lane, Norland. Mr. Alexander?
Hi, good afternoon, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. I'm Kate Martin with WSP. Matt is actually away today, so I will be filling in for him kind of last minute, so apologies for that. Just give me a moment and I'll share my screen here. All right. So again, hello, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. Thank you very much. My name is Kate with WSP. I'm here to present on a returning item, zoning bylaw amendment at 31 Barkwell Lane in the United Townships of Laxton, Digby, and Longford. So again, this is a returning item. It was originally deemed complete and circulated in late 2023. Members of the public were notified within a 120-meter radius, and the statutory public meeting was held at the January 2024 Planning Advisory Committee meeting. During that meeting, the application was referred back to staff due to outstanding comments on the environmental impact study that was submitted with the application, in addition to some concerns raised over the archaeological assessment submitted with the file. So before I get into that, just a bit of a refresh about the site itself. So it's adjacent to Shadow Lake. It's roughly 6.4 hectares in size. It is designated rural, waterfront, and environmental protection in the City of Kawartha Lakes official plan, and it's subsequently designated as general, rural, and limited service residential in the Laxton, Digby, and Longford zoning bylaw. There are provincial natural heritage features on the subject site. There's a watercourse and a wetland area, roughly more so on this side of the property. The watercourse kind of comes through here and then drains out this way. And then on this side of the property, there's some significant woodlands. So getting into a little bit more detail about the file itself and the zoning bylaw amendment, it's intended to support a future severance application. The severance application has been submitted. However, it's on hold still at this time, pending the zoning bylaw amendment, and has not been processed yet by the city. So the intent of the severance application is to create one severed and one retained lot. The severed lot is intended to support the existing single detached dwelling, a garage that is currently under construction, and the existing well and septic. And the remainder of the property is to make up the proposed retained lands, which are intended to be developed to support a future single detached dwelling down the road. So in support of this future severance application, a zoning bylaw amendment was submitted in order to rezone the site. With that, various zones are being implemented across the site. The applicant is proposing to rezone the proposed severed lot from limited service residential to limited service residential exception 6 zone to recognize some reduced lot configuration dimensions. And then the remainder of the property, the retained lands, is intended to be split up into a couple of different zones, mainly an open space exception zone with a holding provision tied to a future subsequent EIS, and then the remainder of the retained lands to be rezoned to rural general exception zones to recognize a reduced lot size, as well as implement a holding provision tied to an EIS. So with that, I'll get into a little bit more detail about the technical matters outstanding at the time of the public meeting. So again, regarding the archaeological assessment, there were some concerns raised by city staff and commenting First Nation agencies that the archaeological assessment was insufficient because it was only completed over a small portion of the property. The concerns were raised, and the applicant actually did go back, and their consultants did additional work to complete an archaeological assessment that covered the entirety of the property. This was subsequently circulated to city staff and other commenting departments. So the concerns about the archaeological assessment were resolved. There was nothing of significance found. And with that, we were able to determine compliance with both PPS and official plan policy respecting archaeological and cultural heritage. The other outstanding item was with respect to the environmental impact study that was submitted. Comments from Kawartha Conservation were outstanding at the time of the public meeting. And again, the environmental impact study was triggered by the presence of the watercourse and wetland and woodland features on site. Following review of the environmental impact study, we believe that the application conforms to both PPS and growth plan policy with respect to protection of natural heritage features and key hydrologic features outside of settlement area boundaries. So those features here will all be rezoned to an open space exception zone. The exception zone will only permit select uses, mainly passive recreational conservation type uses. And prior to any sort of site alteration or implementation of any features to support those uses, a subsequent EIS study would have to be done to remove this holding provision. Similar to the proposed agricultural or rural general, exception zones, this area here was deemed to be viable for development within the EIS. This area here, there are some woodland features in here. However, the EIS did recommend that there could be some tree removal in there subsequent to a future EIS done at a later time that would address any significant habitat that might be found at a later date. So with that, we do believe that the application supports PPS and growth plan policies with regards to protection of natural heritage features. Furthermore, the rezoning of this site will also better align with the OP designations on the property, and the ability to construct a future single detached dwelling on the proposed retained lot will also support adding additional housing stock to the city. So we also then with that recommend that the zoning bylaw amendment as drafted to Appendix D to Report Plan 2024-043 be approved. And that is all. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Ms. Martin. Committee, any questions? Okay. Recommendations? Member O'Reilly?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think I have it here somewhere. Okay, recommendation that Report Plan 2024-043 31 Barkwall Lane zoning bylaw amendment be received for information, that a zoning bylaw amendment respecting application D06-2023-028 substantially in the form attached as Appendix D to Report Plan 2024-043 be adopted by council, and that the mayor and clerk be authorized to execute the documents required by the approval of this application.
Seconder for the motion, Member Barkwell. Any discussion? Calling the question. All in favor? Any opposed? That carries. Thank you. That brings us down to our final item of the afternoon, just shortly before 2:30. Motion for adjournment. Councillor Richardson, seconded by Councillor Warren. All in favor? Thank you.